everybody. It's Michelle Jackson, and I am here with our pen posse. Wow. We have a big pen posse today, everybody. This is going to be so fantastic. We're going to be talking about writing a book and all the do's and don'ts, all the things that we've learned as authors. I've written three books. I've written a Christian fiction novel, a women's fiction novel, as well as a comic book that helps young people learn how to start a business called Poppy Makes Cajun Popcorn Magic. I've been writing all my life, but I published my first book at the age of 35. Now I'm 48 years old. I'm three books in, and hopefully we'll be writing many, many more. I used a vanity publisher for my first book, and I self-published completely my last two books. And so I'm excited to have this opportunity to talk with all of our writers out there about this amazing process of writing a book. And so we have a big panel because there's so many people out there that wants to share with you their experiences on writing. And so we're going to do a couple of things. One, we're going to get real deep about this whole process of writing a book, how to get published, how to market yourself, how to build a fan base. We know many of you out there are self-publishing. We know that 1 million books are self-published every year. But we're not just here to talk about self-publishing. We're going to talk about vanity publishing. We're going to talk about traditionally publishing as well. And the great thing about this session is that you can drop your questions right now in the comment area. You can say hello to us. You can add your questions. We're going to put them up on the screen at some point. And hopefully, we're going to get some answers to you about your book publishing ideas. If you're just starting out, this is a great session for you. If you've published multiple books, this is a great session for you because there's always something to learn. So we are forever learners as writers because this process has been expanded so much because of technology. I can write a book, I can self-publish it through Amazon or Ingram Spark. I can market it myself on social media. I can build my own blogs. I can do a host of things myself. And that wasn't the case 20, 30 years ago. So times have changed. So we're going to start off by getting a short intro from all of our guests so that you can get to know them. They're going to be dropping their information also in the comment area so you can buy their books because we're not just here so you can see our pretty faces. We are here to promote ourselves and to share our knowledge. We want to make sure that we are sharing our knowledge. We started with Miss Anagia. She's going to introduce herself, and then we're going to move to Manning and TH. We're going to get through our intro so we can get in the heart of this book writing process. Get started with.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you again for having me. My name today is author Anagia Wright. I actually do write under the pen name Aziza Spinks as well. I am a techie by trade, but I am a writer by necessity. I have been writing professionally for over 25 years now. I started out traditionally published and have worked my way through to indie publishing. So I'm kind of doing a bit of both at this time. I started writing at a young age. My mother was an English teacher, so I've had books in my life pretty much my entire life, and that's what got me started, and I've been going ever since. So again, thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. I love this because she comes on, she's like a different person every time. She's writing a different genre. She is a true writer, someone who loves the work so much until she has learned to compartmentalize her ideas and write in different genres, which is not always an easy thing. So thank you so much for being with us and sharing your background. She's going to be our expert in some ways on the traditional publishing side because she has been traditionally published. I'm not. I've only vanity published and self-published. So be sure to drop your questions if you have any for her, for me. We're going to get to those at some point. But for now, let's move on to our next guest, Manning. Introduce yourself for us.
Hi, how are you, everybody? My name is Manny Morales. Um, this was actually my first book. It's erotica. Um, I know some people are like, erotica? Not a lot of guys do erotica, but I've kind of fell in love with Zane. She is what inspired me to write. Um, it took me a while to publish. I had the book on hold for a couple years until I found my publishing company, Cagebird Publishing. Um, and she just took it to where I couldn't even imagine. And I'm sitting here now. So I've had people tell me that they're waiting for the sequel because there's a sequel to the book. Spoiler alert. But Yeah, everybody loves it. Everybody that I've come across and has read my book, everybody's just enjoyed it.
I'm so happy to have you here. So Manny came when we did our first um, book fair, the Black
Yes.
Writers Workspace book fair here in New Orleans. I got a chance to meet him. He was the the sharpest dressed brother in the room. He was so amazing. I'm so happy that he was able to be a part of this. And I like that you're writing in erotica because we don't meet a lot of black men that's reading it, writing in that field and that genre. I think you can share quite a bit with us. So I hope that we get a chance to learn more about your
Definitely.
process
Definitely.
and how you're developing your story. So thank you so much for being with us. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Tien?
Good morning, everybody. And first off, I want to thank author Jackson for putting this together. Also, extending an invitation. I write under the name T.H. Moore. Much like Angia, I'm also a techie by trade. I write as a hobby, and I began my writing journey about 16 years ago after seeing a movie that was pretty much so horrible. I didn't even stay the entire length of the movie. And instinctively, I kind of said to myself, I could have wrote a better story than that. So that's kind of like when the light bulb went off. And I would say about 3 months later, my very, very first manuscript of my first book was completed, called The End Justifies the Means. So primarily, I write suspense fiction. All my stories have two main characters so that you have multiple storylines to follow. Much like Arthur Jackson, I have three books. My second book is The Devil's Whisper, and my most recent book that deals with police brutality is called I Am. So, again, glad to be here. Happy to answer any questions and provide some insight about the publishing industry. I'm also a self-published author as well.
Excellent. Excellent. I love this. So just for everyone, I do not know everyone. Okay. I've only met a few of the people on the screen. So we get a list of people who are interested in participating in the Plan Posse. We go through the list. We select those that we really think are going to add the type of the value that we need to this conversation. And so I'm getting to know them just like you are. And I do this intentionally because I want this to be a very open and authentic conversation. I don't want these to be, people in my tribe who are going to say what I want them to say. I want this to be a conversation amongst very unique minded creatives who can bring so much to the table until we all walk away having learned something and have grown from the conversation. So thank you so much, TH, for being with us. I'm looking forward to learn more about your work. Atina, you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. My name is Atina Danner. I am a poet. I'm an artist in multiple genres, visual, I'm a singer, and I've been a writer all of my life as long as I could remember. Poetry is my primary practice these days. I published my first book, Incantations for Rest, last June, and it was a wonderful experience after deciding to publish work instead of just writing in my journals every day and producing so much poetry. I decided one day, you know what? I'm doing this every day of my life. I might as well go ahead and try to publish. So about 3 years ago, I made that decision. I decided, or 2 years ago, I suppose, I decided, I'm going to start publishing, and I started submitting work in different places. And I got this book deal to publish my first book of poems. So that book has done well and is going to actually be re-released this month as a trade book, which is really exciting. So it'll be more widely available to people. And it's been a wonderful experience for me. So I'm continuing to learn and grow as a poet, as a writer, and very excited to share the stage with you all today. I'm located in Evanston, Illinois, which is just north of Chicago, where I went to the School of the Art Institute for undergraduate, and I have a degree in child development for my money-making professional life. Sometimes writing costs more than it makes, depending on what kind of writing you're doing.
I know that one.
Right.
I know that one.
So yeah, that's my creative life.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being here. I'm excited to learn more about your work as well. And you are on the money about how much money is made. So let's put a pin in that conversation because I do think our writers need to understand that Some of us are writing, if you're writing to get rich, it's the long game, all right? It may take a long time to get there, but the richness of the work comes from being able to express yourself on paper and share your craft. And so many of us are making money, but I don't want to leave everybody with the idea that you're going to self-publish a book and then the next day you're going to be rich. Okay, you may not be a millionaire, $1,000 heir, may not even be $100,
Yeah.
$10 heir on day
Yeah.
300 after you publish your book. But you just have to stick in there and keep pushing forward. So thank you so much for being with us. Very nice to meet you. Coach Ebony?
Hey everyone, I am Coach Ebony Consulting LLC, which is a boutique writing and publishing company here in Rochester, New York. I began my business in 2016, and I'm going strong ever since then. I am also I think I'm at 10 or 11 books now, which includes fiction, nonfiction, journals, and I'm also a podcast host, and I also help my clients tell their story, boldly tell their story, either spoken or written.
Excellent, excellent. I've done a lot with Coach Ebony. She's been on here a couple of times. She is definitely going to bring the deeds when it comes to informing us about writing and editing. So, I mean, in writing, editing, and coaching. So, thank you so much for being with us. Shonda, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. My name is Shonda Buchanan. I am the author of 5 books, actually. So let's see if you can see this one. Who's Afraid of Black Indians? This is my first collection of poetry. And then also this memoir, Black Indian. I think my camera, yeah, there it is. Black Indian as well. Then I have 2 anthologies. I have another collection of poetry. I'm a journalist. I'm an academician. I taught at Hampton University for 13 years. I teach at Loyola Marymount University currently. And I'm also faculty for the MFA program at Alma College. And so I've been teaching and writing, for the last 30 years, I think. And I haven't self-published anything. And I've generally gone with publishers. And yes, you do not make a lot of money anyway, unless you make, you hit that big sapphire $500,000 contract or something along those lines. But the reward is actually in the writing. The reward is in how people receive that work. So, and then also with regards to my degrees, I have an MFA in creative writing as well. A master's in English, BA in English. So I've been in and around writing, teaching, education, yes, for most of my life. Happy to be here. Thanks so much, Michelle.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being with us. We're going to learn a lot from you today. So this is great. This is great. Renee, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, yes. Good morning, everyone. Despite the computer issues and glitches, I am here. God is good. My name is Renee Stubbs. I am the CEO of Stubbs House LLC. I am hauling out of Delaware. I'm born and raised from Philadelphia. And I started with this whole process because my daughter just woke up one day and said, "Mommy, I want to write a book." And then she continued to say it week after week that she wanted to write a book. And I wanted to get behind her because I remember when I was a little girl and I wanted to start writing, I didn't have anyone getting behind me. They didn't know what to do to support me. I wrote my first piece of poetry at the age of 12. And I just did some Googling and figured out, how can I publish this piece of work? And as a 12-year-old, I figured it out on my own with no supports. And I just didn't want my children to have to figure it out. So I got behind my kids and said, you know what, kids can do business too. And so that is the focus of my business, is children can be entrepreneurs as well. And they can start young and they can have businesses as well. So we have a book called Yes, Ma'am, We Must Have Good Manners. And we have just finished our piggyback book, Yes, Sir. that's piggybacking off of that book. And I have also self-published several journals, but our Yes Ma'am and Yes Sir book has gone through a traditional publishing company. So I've had the experience with both publishing through a company as well as doing some things on my own. So I'm able to compare how those experiences went. So I'm glad to be able to offer some information today. My website is www.thestubbshouse.com. Thank you for having me today.
Excellent. So great to have you here. And now I know that we have more than just one person who's traditionally published a book. We're going to have a fantastic conversation because I do know that that is the type of question that's constantly coming up on the Black Writers Workspace is how do I get an agent? How do I traditionally publish my book? Now, I will tell you, everybody doesn't want to be traditionally published. Some of us didn't even seek it. We decided to self-publish, and there's nothing wrong with that. So we're going to have a great conversation about that. I know I have Tian and Allison. Tian, if you want to, have you already introduced yourself? People have been moving around on the screen, so I want to make sure.
No, we are still here. Coach Tian Singletary, and I am just so happy and thrilled to be here. I am the motivator of excellence. When I speak, people do. I speak life into you. Like Les Brown would say, it's my plum pleasing pleasure to be here with amongst greats of in the writing world, and I'm just excited for what's to happen here today. 18 years of military service, still serving right now as we speak. I have two businesses, TS Leadership Empowerment, that deals with professional leadership coaching, speaking, and teaching, and I am a president advisory council on the Maxwell leadership team. Now for today, what I'm excited about is SP Serves Publishing, where I am an author myself, have 4 books that have been written and out published. 2 is here, and I have been part of 8 anthologies where 7 out of 8 has hit #1 best-selling internationally as well, and I'm just excited for what is coming to into SP Serves Publishing because of most of my business is all referrals, just serving my clients, serve them to the max, and be able to help them to be able to publish their work that refer others to me. So I'm just excited and thrilled for what God has in store here today and what God has in store for our future together.
Excellent. Thank you, Tia. I'm so excited to have you here. I think this is your second time being on the Pen Posse, so I really do appreciate you being a part of this event. Allison, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. Thank you so much for having me here. I count it a blessing. So I am Allison G. Daniels. I am an international best-selling author and publisher. As of today, I have written over 41 plus books. I am the visionary author of 5 books. And what I mean by that is I have several authors under with me on a collaboration of 5 books. I am the founder and CEO of AGD Publishing Services, where we are dedicated in turning writers into successful authors 1 book at a time. I am also a book writing coach, a mom of 2 beautiful queens. I've been married now for the past 21 years and a caregiver to my mom and dad. Thank you so much for having me here.
This is a great panel, y'all. Look how big and beautiful. And we got through introductions in like 15 minutes or 18 minutes, and that's excellent. So we're going to get into the heart of this. This is a big group, so we won't have a chance to hear from absolutely everybody, but we want to talk about writing a book and publishing a book. And there's so many questions that are coming in, I can't even keep up. So we're going to go back and try to get some of that taken care of. But today we're going to talk about this in a couple of different bullets. One is getting and staying inspired to write. That's going to be our first topic, is getting and staying inspired to write. Then we're going to talk about getting started, and that means building an outline, organizing your chapters, building good characters, developing realistic plots. Then we're going to move into writing with authenticity, which is a big thing. Last Pen Posse was about writing for the culture. We talked about how do we write to empower the Black community. So we're going to talk a little bit about writing with authenticity and why that's important. Then we're going to move to writing with rules and standards. And of course, that's going to be all about editing, getting your work edited and making sure you're putting a great product out there. We know that your book is going to outlive you. So we want to make sure that we're putting the best product out that we can. So just because we're self-published, vanity published, or traditionally published doesn't mean that we should be missing any steps in putting out the best work possible. Then we're going to go to finalizing your manuscript. We're going to talk about getting a copyright, your ISBN, and legal matters, getting published, book marketing and believing in your work. Now, lots of questions are already coming in, but I want to get started with this inspiring. We may kind of mix these things up and get some questions in as we go. Everyone, all 9 people will not speak on every topic. So we'll take maybe 2 or 3 do's and don'ts, and they have 2 or 3, 1 or 2 of those do's and don'ts for you. What I recommend is everybody get some paper and an ink pen, because you're going to learn some things. The first time we did this, I walked away and I literally changed the book cover for one of my books because I learned so much from just hearing other authors talk about their experiences. So we're here to share, and we're going to share honestly about this process. So let's get started. Anybody want to talk about your do's and don'ts on getting and staying inspired to write?
I can start with that. Actually, I have really just one key thing that I really try to instill in people who ask me that question, and it's really about finding what works for you. Like, there are so many people that have these rules about, oh, you're not a real writer if you don't write every day, or you have to publish X number of books every year, and that sort of thing. And while from a marketing perspective, there's some validity in some of those things, to keep inspired and to really stay focused. Find what works for you. And that could be getting up every morning and writing every day. I don't necessarily do that. I write in cycles. It took me years to kind of acknowledge that and be okay with that. But I became much more productive when I understood that during the first 6 months of the year, I pretty much am going to focus on the business side. And from July to December is when my characters talk to me. It's when I'm most in that kind of headspace to write, and be okay with only writing. So try to be productive during whatever your peak cycle is, so that you can still move forward, but you don't always feel like you're a failure or you're not a real writer if you're not doing this on an everyday basis. So that's kind of my key takeaway as far as how to stay inspired.
Finding what writes for you. I love that, because sometimes we get into this and we're looking for someone to give us this silver bullet on how to stay inspired. Some people write emotionally. I write when I feel like writing. I am not a structured writer. I don't get up and do 8 hours of writing, but I would love to learn to do that. But that's not how I write. Anybody else? When you are looking,
yeah, I like a caveat on that too as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's one of the main things how I write as well. I mean, when it appear, write it here, right? That's the way how I think, and that's the way how I've been writing all my life. It just comes. I could be in the grocery store with my grocery in front of me. I would stop in the middle of the aisle and start typing away in the middle of the store, because that's the way how my mind works, right? So when they appear, I write it down. Some of us have the thought process, oh, I'm gonna write down later, I'm waiting till I get to the house. Well, you get to the house and you sit in your thinking chair and nothing comes out, right? Because you already forgot about it. So soon it appears in your mind, take time to remember it, stop, write it down, because you would not be able to go back and write on it later on. I know for me, it doesn't work that way for me. So I have to write in the moment, emotionally, spiritually, whatever I'm feeling during that time, whatever's going on through my life. So when they appear, write it down.
Stop, drop, and write. Everybody, stop, drop, write. Love that. I like that. I'm like that too. And what nurtures that also is having people around you who are going to be okay with that, who don't think you're a little odd to pull your notepad out.
He look crazy. He look crazy.
Yeah. My family knows. They see that notepad come out. All right, we can be sitting in church. We can be anywhere. I'm going to write. I have to take that inspiration when I can, because sometimes, of course, moving through life, things just inspire you. It could be a bird, it could be a tree, it could be a message, and it just is something to build off of. But now I'm always writing because I'm blogging, I'm writing books, I'm doing all those different things. So I love that. Very good advice. Anybody else want to talk about staying inspired?
I wanted to add in something. I won't be long-winded, but it just popped in my mind. Don't overthink it. We tend to just overthink the whole process, overthink what should I write down, what should I not write down, does it all make sense? One thing I always keep in mind is it doesn't all have to make sense right away. And no one's looking. It's your notepad, right? And you're taking your notes, you're jotting things down, you're telling your story, and no one is looking. That is the opportunity to go ahead and put it all down. And you can make sense out of it along the way or a little bit later. But people always say, well, Renee, how do I get started? Well, get started. Get started, write it all down. Don't worry about making sense out of everything. You got to get those thoughts out of your mind onto the paper, and then you can work out the kinks along the way.
Right. Right.
Absolutely.
I'd like to add something
So
too.
I wanted to add.
Okay, hold on. Well, I can't see everybody. Ebony, I know you were you were about to say something.
Yeah, so I just wanted to add to the user, the Facebook user that just noted here, if you could use your voice recorder. I have voice notes on my phone. And if an idea, if I'm not in a place where I can stop and write, like I believe his name is 10 had said, I use my voice notes. I do that when I'm driving. So that's a great, yes, that works as well. But what I was going to say is to set obtainable goals when you are sitting down. And so like today's April 1st. And if you want to complete your book by December 31st, don't look at December 31st as that's your big goal, but set smaller goals, maybe daily, if not daily, then weekly goals that you can see yourself accomplishing. Because sometimes if we see the bigger goal and that's all we focus on, then we won't, it becomes overwhelming if we see August comes by or has rolled up and we haven't accomplished much as we thought. But if we set those smaller goals, maybe if your goal is every week you have 5 pages written, whatever your schedule allows. Some people can do a chapter in a week, whatever your schedule allows. But set those smaller goals that will get you to your larger goal.
Excellent. And someone else wanted to?
I do. One other thing to think about. So when I started writing my first novel, I was basically writing it from midnight to 4 a.m. because I had a daughter. I was a single mom. And so you do find whenever you can find that time, you need to write. Recently, I set a schedule for myself a few months ago from 10 to 12. If I wasn't teaching, then I would be writing. And that was really productive for a couple of months. And then life got in the way and I had, meetings and that kind of a thing. So your schedule will shift. So be easy with yourself with regards to that. Walter Mosley writes a page a day. Really sweet man. But when he gives that advice, and he has a fantastic craft book on fiction as well. But so he writes a page a day and he says, at least, I can, get whatever I need out, get something done. And then I can move on, with my day. And if he decides he wants to write more, then he'll write more. But I think really your schedule in terms of writing is something that will fluctuate. You can set it. And then, I like the idea of writing that first part of the year, or rather researching or working the first part of the year and writing the next part of the year. Academicians write in the summer. So we're teaching, during the spring semester, fall semester, and then we write during the summer. The other thing, someone asked a question about how do you get the ideas out if you have so many ideas? Make a schedule. So you make a schedule for, I'm going to work on this idea today or this plot or the characterization today or, for this week. And then next week, you're going to work on maybe imagery and, so you can just create a schedule for yourself. And the same if you write in different genres, you can create a schedule for yourself of what you're going to work on that week, that day, that hour.
Excellent. We're going to take one more comment on this topic. Anybody?
Okay. Oh, Allison. So what I just wanted to say is actually ditto on setting realistic goals. Is when you set realistic goals, don't make them so high where you become burned out trying to achieve them. Take that time to just start writing things down. Like I can write a book in a day. You may not be able to write a book in a day. So start writing things down, what you want to accomplish that day. If you just want to write that chapter, if you just want to complete that outline so that you don't get burned out or discouraged or distracted, just start writing some things down and accomplish 1 or 2 things a day so that you can reach that goal, even if it's in August or December.
Excellent. I'm going to wrap it up by saying that I remember taking a screenwriting course a couple of years back, and I remember the person teaching the course said to write, even if you have to write it poorly. And we're going to talk a little bit about editing a little bit later, but the idea is to get it on paper, get it down on paper. Don't worry about trying to perfect it as it comes to you, because then it's gonna stagnate your writing. If you're going, am I writing this correctly? Just write, and then you can go back and make sure that it's well edited. So what we've got out of writing, getting inspired, is find what works for you. You know, everybody doesn't have the silver bullet for you, but go with what works for you. Um, think, you know, stop, drop, what is it? Stop, drop, and write. That's right. We're going to, don't stop. Get into, I like you said, Tia, you said the thinking chair. I love that. The destination, the place where you go where you feel the most inspired. I like what you said, that right in the moment, like get it out. You know, start where you are and write it out. Even if you just write a few lines just to keep yourself, you know, to something to remember when you do get to your thinking spot, your writing spot. Don't overthink it. Right, Renee? We're not going to overthink these things, because you lose your creativity when you are overthinking. And that goes back to the, even if you have to write it poorly, just write it, just get it out of you. Set smaller goals. I like that, Ebony. Set a schedule. Be easy. You talking about Walter Mosley writing 1 page a day, 1 page a day. I could do that. You just, I can stop now. I'm good. I've learned everything I need to learn from this posse, because if I could just get myself to write 1 page a day, I could do that. And set realistic goals. Excellent session. We have a lot of comments coming in, y'all. I don't know how we're gonna do these comments. We're gonna get to as many as we can. We're gonna answer as many questions as we can. People out there, continue to drop your comments and your questions. We're gonna try to get to them. If you need to drop them twice, do so, because we've got this set up. We're gonna be going over certain things at certain times. So if you put something out there earlier, we didn't get to it, drop it again if you need to. I know people do talk a lot about the SMART goals. I don't know all the details of it. Anybody want to talk a little bit about SMART goals? I had another Pin Posse, someone was very in detail, but it's kind of everything we just said, you know, about setting those SMART goals. But that is one type of theory of using. Anybody want to talk to that? Tien, do you want to?
Yeah, I was the one who posted that in the chat. I don't know why I got Facebook user. That's crazy. I gotta fix that. But SMART goals. The S stands for be specific on what you want. The M is make sure you set measurable goals. You have measurements in between. The A is attainable. Make sure that it is attainable, that you can do it. Okay, that is attainable. The R is realistic. Make sure that it is realistic, that it makes sense. Then T, time bound. So set a time. If your goal don't have a date, then guess what? It's not a goal. It's not a SMART goal. So if you want to get things done on time, take action now, then you got to set the date. Put a date on it.
Excellent. All right. Good session. We're going to now move to getting started. Now we're motivated. We've got some ideas on paper. We're not talking about getting started. How do you start writing your books? Now, this is where we talk about, are you outlining? I know we talked about just writing where you are, having SMART goals, being realistic. Those are the things that, you know, kind of get your juices moving and trying to give you some structure around writing. But now the question is, do you outline as a writer? I don't initially, but I end up at some point going back and doing it, because I write fiction. And with fiction, if you don't have, first of all, the first thing I do is to create character profiles. I want to know my characters. I want to love my characters. I want to talk about, do they like ice cream? What's their favorite color? When are their birthdays? I build my characters. And then I began to build my outline. Now, I don't always stick to the outline, but it's just something there to keep me structured. Anybody else want to talk about their process?
Absolutely.
Manny, we haven't heard from you. You want to talk a little bit about?
Well, my process is a little bit different because my imagination is a little bit different than most people. So once I get, like when I wrote Love Is Our Magic, I got the main kind of what I was going to write about. And while I was at work or at the grocery store, I would actually live the story in my head and go through their daily, you know, what's going to happen to them in the chapters, and just relive that till I could actually put it down on paper. And then once I get that down, it's kind of like stop and then start when I'm somewhere else. And I'll just live the story in my head, pretty much like I'm reading it, but I'm actually creating it at the same time. So
I love that. I
and then
love that.
with it
Mhm.
being erotica, it's like you have to be um in the moment. So like my job, you really don't need a lot of brain power. You do, but I mean, I like my mind goes in different places. So it's like I could be doing something next to somebody, but in my mind, I'm somewhere else. I'm not there. I'm writing a book or the next chapter. So yeah, that's my process. And I also jot down, like right now I'm working on a erotic poetry book. So I've been jotting down different ideas for different poems. So
You know, I don't know, and you guys can tell me. Are we the sanest of humans as writers?
no,
Because you live this
No.
dual reality, right?
No.
you
Well, I
know,
don't think it helps to care about that.
No, we're not. We're not as sane as people think we are because
No, I
I
think
can write you in my story and kill you that way.
we're writing stories when we should probably be thinking about other things. Our mind,
Mhm.
the mind is just, it's such a wonderful imagination, it's just the imaginary play, play field, playground. You're
right,
just
right,
always, you're seeing people. I wrote my first book sitting in an Olive Garden. I literally would go there every day and like spread all the papers out on the table, and they got so accustomed to me coming.
right,
And but I like to hear people talk, the dialogue, listening
Yeah.
to people talk and move,
right.
and I love listening to Frank Sinatra. They're playing it. I'm eating breadsticks, y'all. I'm like in my zone. And my husband's in Iraq at the time. He's military, so it was just me, the breadsticks, and my characters. And I couldn't explain that to anybody because I'm sure they were like, you a bit touched. Anybody else? What's your process? But I like the reliving. Now you're writing erotica, so reliving that. I
Yeah.
don't want to go into
I
all of it.
mean, yeah, in your mind, it's a whole lot different. You just got to avoid the arousal part, while you're in public. But reliving some of the moments in my mind, it makes it more realistic for me to be able to visualize what I'm going to write.
I see my books as movies, so that is excellent. Anybody else want to tap into how do you get started with writing?
I do
As
an
a
outline.
poet, I
Let's
Oh,
go
find
to,
that
I'm sorry. Let's go to TH. I know everybody wants
yeah.
to chime in. Let's go with you, and then we're
Yeah,
gonna get
so
to everybody else. Mhm.
yeah, thanks. So like for me, for my process, like I was raised an only child, so I've always had an active imagination. So but being born in the 70s, they just said, he doesn't pay attention. Nowadays they probably say I have ADD. So I literally when I sit down, I shut my phone off. I turn off all types of stimulation. TV is off. I let my friends know, hey, I'm going to be writing between these hours. If you try to contact me, you're not going to get a response. So they have that respect for what I'm trying to do. But I'm also was fortunate enough where I learned how to type in high school. So I literally close my eyes and I just type what I see in my head. Now back to the process where you're talking about the outlines, like absolutely, you need to have an outline so that you don't go off on a tangent. And like you pointed out, there's going to be times you're going to deviate from the course that you set yourself, but you'll always have that foundation and that anchor to make sure that the story you started off with doesn't turn into something completely different by the time you're halfway through all your chapters. So for me, that's my writing process. It's when people look at my stories and they try to characterize my writing style, they say it reads like a movie. And that's what I attribute to my style, where I literally can see in my head the characters. I can hear their voices, the type of clothes that they're wearing, the different type of vernacular. So it goes to the point where we're like, are we sane? Probably not. We're a little crazy, but that crazy gives just a little, just a little bit. So that crazy gives us that freedom to give people the stories that we write. And I'll just wrap it up with this: is that I remember one of the authors saying like, yeah, you know, I might get to kill you in one of my stories. And in my latest book, I Am, that deals with police brutality, I killed Mike Zimmerman. So that's like one of those fields and one of those areas where I was just like, yeah, I don't like that dude. Now, if I did this in real life, I'll go to prison.
Right.
But if I kill him in my book, it'll make me feel a whole lot better. So that's just my process.
Love it. Anybody throw some hands up. So anybody want to address this? Renee?
I just wanted to say I see some of the comments coming through. There's really no wrong answer. Like one Facebook user said they start with the end. Another Facebook user said that, well, I start with the concept and the message that I want to get across, which as a children's book writer, that's kind of what I do as well. I start with, well, what's my message? What do I want to teach the kids? What message do I want to get across? Is it going to be a story about kindness, fairness, sharing, or whatever the case is? And then I build from there and begin to tell the story. But one piece I wanted to say that is a part of my flow that works for me is much like a graphic designer, or if you're ordering something from a business like business cards, they send you a mock-up. You pay for the service, they send you a sample and the mock-up. So what I like to do is with my kiddos is I like to actually create an actual mock-up. I mean, literally simple pieces of paper, stapled together, fold them. Like I'm creating this makeshift mock-up of the book and I'm handwriting it in page by page by page by page by page. And this is my sample. And it just kind of gives me something tangible to look at and flip through with the kiddos as they're creating their work as well. So creating a mock-up could be good for some folks, but there's really no wrong answer to this. And I think it probably differs depending on the genre, right? Depending on if you're a children's author, if you write fiction or, murder, crime scenes, really just kind of go with the flow, what works for you. And what works for me is I need to see a sample and I need to feel it and be able to go back and flip through as to what I'm saying my book is going to look like.
Love that. And you're right. I when I did my comic book, I did the same thing. I just created a markup. You just you definitely, it's much easier because you have those illustrators that have to come in. So you do the wording and then have them. For me, I had to have someone come in and draw the illustration. So I love that. But every genre is different. And I love this comment here, Anagia, that says, I do as I'm told by my characters. For those of you who write fiction, whether it's children, sci-fi, fantasy, women, the characters come alive. And it's so hard when you're trying to like I said, you can't explain this to real sane people because they're like, what? But they do, they speak to you, and you're trying to write something for a character and the character is literally saying, I wouldn't do that. That's not who I am. And you're going, you're right, you wouldn't do that. It's a wonderful feeling. But I think, Ebony, you were gonna chime in on this as well.
Yeah, I was gonna say I prefer an outline, whether it's fiction, nonfiction. When I do devotionals or journals, well, not so much journals, but for my devotionals and things, I do an outline. It helps me to be focused. And then it also gives me an opportunity to work on any part of the book that I want to at any time. Except for fiction. Sometimes fiction, I have to kind of go in order to make sure that the story does streamline accordingly. But for the most part, when I do my outline, whatever I'm inspired to work on, because I have that outline, I know what's going to go in each chapter. I can work on each chapter and then piece it all together at the end.
Yes. Love this. Outlining is not a bad thing. Everyone doesn't use an outline. Don't feel like you have to do it, but it is helpful if you're just trying to stay, keep things in order. I know, especially when it comes to building a plot and, you don't want to get it wrong. You don't want to say something. First of all, let's remember this. The readers are smart. Okay. They're smart. They will look at what you've written and you're talking about some side of Atlanta, or you're talking about an ocean or something. They're like, nope, that's not correct. They're smart. They're looking at all the details. So building that outline and those profiles help you to keep everything together and make sure it flows and make sure it makes sense Because if you're writing in pieces, you may write a couple of chapters and then come back and write a couple of other chapters, and you may completely take your character away from where you started because you don't have that structure, something to look back on and say, okay, yeah, this person should be doing this and moving in this direction. Anybody else want to, Shonda, do you want to talk about your process?
So I talked a little bit about it with regards to the schedule that I used to keep, but right now I think my writing process is writing when I can. But with regards to organizing my ideas, there are a couple of things that I do because I write in all genres. I write in poetry, fiction, narrative nonfiction, screenplay. I do everything. So one of the things that I'll do is I will just basically get out that idea on a sheet of paper, and then it's not even an actual outline. It's basically kind of the mood, the emotion. What do I want the reader to feel in terms of that, the scene or the chapter, or, what is the entire book about? And then I'll go back and I'll just start pulling out moments that I want to write about. So basically it's, okay, let me get the characterization here. Let me write about this character here. Or I go and draft a chapter. So right now I'm working on a second memoir, and I'm working on chapter 3 right now. And I'm actually pulling from my journal. And so I pull from my journal and I say, okay, I want to write what's part of the information that's in my journal, but then I also have to create the scene. And then I also have to go back to details. So I'm honestly, I am just pulling from wherever I can to create a really fantastic chapter. The one thing that I do after I pull from my journal is I go back to make sure I'm writing what looks like for me a beginning and a middle and an end, because I'm always thinking about the arc of whatever it is I'm writing. I think chapter by chapter, I think the entire book, like what is the mood that I would like to evoke in this particular scene, in this particular chapter, and then the entire book. So I think about it like that. Something else that's really helpful for people is they will write with note cards. So for example, they'll organize. They will write the beginning of something. It could be the entire book with note cards. It can be chapter by chapter. So what happens in this chapter with note cards? Maybe you'll have 5 or 6 note cards per chapter. So if you have 5 or 6 note cards per chapter, then maybe by the time you finish blocking out the entire book, you've got maybe 50 note cards in front of you. And if you feel like something doesn't work in a particular scene or a particular chapter, you can change that out as well. So, I mean, those are elements that people use. And right now I'm writing in the flow. I'm writing in the flow.
I love that. Writing in the flow. I think we have a question here about, is outlining best for an autobiography? I think you did mention you're writing your memoir. I know you just kind of addressed this, but you want to just reemphasize?
Yes, so actually for the second memoir, the first memoir, Black Indian, I wrote it by I did not block it out with outlines. The first memoir was basically, what are the scenes that I'd like to make sure I'm getting out there, and then who are the characters that I'm following. And so Black Indian deals with my family, African Americans who have indigenous roots, American Indian roots, but also I wanted to tell the story of my women. So I was focusing on my mom, my aunts, those characters, my sister, myself. The second memoir, I actually did do chapter outlines. So with chapter 1, I basically wrote a paragraph of what was going to happen. Chapter 2, I wrote a paragraph of what was going to happen. Chapter 3, etc. Because my next book is about travel and spirituality and relationships. And so I did do chapter outlines, but I didn't do like an actual kind of the Roman numeral 1, 2, 3, those kinds of outlines. I didn't do that. So I did chapter outlines, and now I have to go back and fill those in.
Anybody want to take this question, the difference between an autobiography and a memoir?
Yep. So an autobiography is the from start to beginning of your life. I'm sorry, from start to current of your life if you're writing it, or if someone else is telling someone else's story, then they can go from beginning to end if they are deceased. So typically, when it comes to autobiographies, you can think of Michelle Obama. Her book, Becoming Michelle, is an autobiography. She starts way when she was a child to present. Okay, to when that book was released. That's an autobiography. And memoir is what President Obama had written. His book focuses on the 8 years of his presidency. He did talk about a bit of his childhood, going to college, getting into Congress, Senate, and then becoming the president. But the majority of it is his focus on his presidency. So your autobiography is your entire life, or if you're writing someone else's life, like Alex Haley did for Malcolm X, he went through his entire life. Or in a memoir is snapshots, different specific, different pieces of your life that you want to tell. There's typically a theme to it. What is your primary focus that you want to share about your life? Like I did my memoir called Heart Attacks Happen, and its focuses on my relationships with men and God. And so that was my primary focus. So that's a memoir is more, it doesn't have to be in line. It doesn't have to be, I would say linear like autobiographies do. They have to be straight through, whereas as a memoir, you can go from present to past as you write, as you will.
Okay. We're going to wrap this session up. The next thing we're going to talk about is going to be writing with authenticity, rules, and standards. But I want to say this about getting started and, you know, how you do things. Someone said it best. What is the message? Is what I want everybody to start thinking about when they get to this point. What is the message? And sometimes you may not know this early in the game. You're just getting started. You may not know what the message is, but there is an overarching message to all of the things that we write. I remember I wrote my first book, someone asked me what the book was about, and I wanted to give them this long dissertation because you're so close to the work. You want to give all the details and explain all the characters and everything. A girlfriend of mine read my book and she said, your book is about money can't buy you love. She summed it up that way, and it really opened my mind up to that is really the message of the book. If I would have kind of saw that at the beginning, I probably wouldn't have had so many hurdles to jump in trying to figure out where I was going with things. Anybody else, just very, very quickly, like a round robin, what's the message of your book? Give the title and the message in one line. Can you do that?
I'll get started. My book, Incantations for Rest, is a book of poetry and reflections. And the message of my book is you are worthy of rest and connection and love.
Excellent. Anybody? Go for it.
Love is Our Magic is my title. And the message that I'm trying to give is no matter how hard love has been for you in your life, never give up on love, because love isn't in a conformed box. Love is crazy. Love is simple. Love is difficult. Love, you just have to accept it for what it is and find that love that you're looking for.
Excellent. Anybody else?
I've got one for my book, The Burning Queen, under the Aziza Sphinx name. It pretty much, it's don't tick off the runt of the litter. Like, even if you are considered to be the lesser in your family or your friend group or what have you, you too can still, prosper, and you too can still live your best life and prove to yourself and others that you are worthy.
You are worthy. Love that. Anybody else?
So my book is entitled Women Be Free, and it's a collection of chapters from various women. And the message is, it's time to be free, to laugh, to live, and to love again, and to be authentic.
Excellent. 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 Okay, we're going to wrap that session. This is what we learned getting started. You can visualize what it is that you're trying to write. Relive it, as Manny said. I love that. Pierre said to set out the world, and he does use an outline. Renee said, what's your message? Know what your message is. And that's exactly what we were just talking about. Know the message. We talked about outlining in detail. And Shonda said something. She said, what do you want the reader to feel? That's what you need to start with. What do you want them to feel? And she talked about think of the arc. That is very, very important. Great, great areas, everybody. I love this. We're going to move along. Once again, so many comments coming in. We're going to get to as many as possible. Some of them are questions, some of them are just comments. But we want to move to writing with authenticity. And then we're going to talk about writing with rules and standards. And, you know, we can kind of combine them all. When I say authenticity, I mean being truthful, because the readers, once again, are smart. They know when you didn't put time and energy into your book. They know when you didn't get it edited. They know when you didn't care about, what they were going to feel. They know when you just wrote it because you felt like, it was time for you to write something, but you didn't do any research. You didn't try to connect with them. They know. They are very smart, because you got to remember what readers do. They take your words, they digest them, and they create imagery.
Yeah.
That's what they do. So you have to be smart to be a reader, right? It's not like a movie. You turn the TV on and the imagery is in front of you. The reader has to have the type of mindset to be able to take your words and to create a world with it. So if you're not authentic, somebody tell me what happens when you're not authentic, and what do you do to ensure that your work is authentic? Anybody? Go ahead. Ebony?
Yeah, so I would, a few years ago, I forget the name of the book, but I tend to look at comments or reviews on Amazon. And I look at the two, sometimes the three, but the 2 and 1 star reviews, because to me, those are avid readers' reviews. If you look at them from a place of wanting to learn how to better yourself as an author, you should read those 2 and 1 star reviews. And what I've learned, it was, I forget the name of the book and the author, but the author was talking about, in the book, they were talking about life as in the army. And the reader, or the reader went in on this author and said everything that he shared was inaccurate. And he was just like, we don't do that. We don't do this. We don't do that. We do this. We do that. They were wrong. They used the wrong branch. He tore it up. And so that showed me, do your research.
Mm-hmm.
I live here in Rochester, New York. I love New York City, DC. Just drop me off and just leave me alone. I catch you when I'm done exploring. I love DC. New Orleans is one of my favorite places. I've been there at least 6 times. Okay. So from what I know about these cities, I can write from them. If I went to Vegas a few times, Miami, these other places, right? I've never been to LA. So if I'm going to write a character that's been to LA, I need to do my research. I need to know about these specific neighborhoods, what people are like. I need to really get in there, because the last thing I want is someone who's been to LA and they're like, well, you said this place is there. You did this. That's wrong. Do your research. Do your research. If you have to go there, if you have the opportunity and time to go to a specific city, take a weekend. Go ahead and explore, because you need to be as accurate, as authentic as possible when you are talking about somebody's city. My friend down in New Orleans, she knows her city better than I do. She lived there all her life. So I can't write a story about New Orleans and just go with, a few basic things. No, she's my friend. So I know she'll check me real hard and be like, no, girl, we don't do that down here. So if you want to, so if my character is doing that from a tourist standpoint, yes. But from someone that lives down there, I need to be more authentic and do some research and connect with people who live there who can help me.
Absolutely. Authenticity is so important, because the reader is smart. So those of you who are out there writing, don't think that you're going to build, even if it's a make-believe world, and put things in it that the reader can't understand and digest and perceive could be true. Don't think, well, this is fiction, so I can just write it anyway. No, no, no. And there are cultural things, like Ebony was saying, I live in New Orleans. I'm not from New Orleans. I wouldn't try to write a book about a character in New Orleans. And I live here because it's bigger than just landmass. It's about the culture. And if you insult the culture, then your readers are going to be turned off. So anybody else, how do you get and stay at a place of authenticity? And I like that Ebony, what you said about the 1 and 2 star reviews. You can learn a lot by reading reviews.
You can.
Right.
You really
can.
can. So
Do
anybody
not be
else
afraid of them.
this?
So I can add to that. So there's a balancing act even with that, though. I had somebody asked earlier about why I left from traditional and moved to self-publishing. And one of the concerns I had initially with my traditional editor is that I had written some things that was about Atlanta. Born and raised in Atlanta, in Decatur on the south side. So, I knew Atlanta. And there were places that I described that anybody from Atlanta knew, that's such and such neighborhood, or, they knew. My editor was from up north. And immediately she was like, places like this don't exist. This is unrealistic. And I'm like, I'm going to need you to come to the South, because this is some of the stuff that we do here in the South. So yes, it is about the culture part, but also being mindful that sometimes your reader's not going to get that. I had a reader give me a 1-star review for my book, Loving Deja. She went into this whole tangent about it's witchcraft, and because one of my main characters is he's a hired killer, but he has a dissociative personality disorder. This is, he's able to control it through meditation and what have you, which in a lot of cultures they are able to do. Things that in America are considered mental health issues are actually viewed as a connection to a different, universe, a different way of processing energy, those sorts of things. But you will have some readers who are not going to get that perspective. They are going to look at it only from their lenses. So for me, I had to be okay with that's fine. That's how they viewed it. But there also are other views of those experiences, and that, I had to be okay with. I wrote it this way because it was a truth that I had experienced, or in some cases, a truth that I had researched. So, even when you're looking at reviews, be mindful that readers are going to have their own perspective. Like Michelle had said earlier about, when you're telling your stories, the readers are kind of formulating their own visualizations of how things are. And sometimes it passes the muster, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes, people will only see their version of it. Just like when you're writing, you may only see your version of it, and somebody else come back and read it and say, hey, I felt sorry for this character. And I'm like, I didn't write this character for you to feel sorry for them. They're a bad person. They really were a bad person. But, that reader was able to see another perspective, and they got why this person was such a bad person. And that helped me even as a writer to say, I was able to go back and look and say, okay, I can see where you got that. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I can see where you got that from reading this story and how I presented that character.
Love it. And you're right. Readers will take you to task. They will take you to task. So when you write, you have to be willing to stand behind what you write. My first novel, my main character was a white man. It was a story that came to me after a bad day at work, built the character, wasn't trying to write a book. It turned into a book. And I wasn't really thinking about how people would perceive that. I mean, he dealt with a lot of things. He dealt with racism. He was out of Georgia. I lived in Georgia. It was a great story. But I had someone say, why wasn't he Black? And I had to explain. I felt like I needed to explain, but I also knew that as a creative, I do believe that as a creative, I should be able to write characters as long as I'm any character I want, as long as I'm not being, stereotypical or, unfair, my research and those types of things. So you do have to be prepared for the reader to take you to task on what it is that you write. So anybody else on authenticity? How do we get there? Tien?
Yeah, so as a writer, my mission is to connect with the reader, right? That's my overall mission. So when I am creating a certain particular topic that I want them to use into their life, my goal is to find a story within my life that I could be authentic with and be real. So that way they can connect emotionally. Once they connect emotionally, then I could be able to help shape their mindset to change that perspective that they may have on a particular topic to help them to move forward faster in life. So the main goal for me is to have stories and connect with my reader with stories. The best way to connect with anyone is to tell stories, right? And stories that are real from you personally or from someone that you have worked with and they are okay with you sharing their story to the world.
Now let's talk with our nonfiction writers about how are you building that authenticity. I mean, being authentic and connecting with your readers, because when you write from a nonfiction perspective, I see you as a subject matter expert, right?
Exactly.
Now, I've had people to say, I wrote a book about marriage, but I've never been married before. And I'm going, I've been married 20 years. I'm sorry. I just need to be married to tell me about marriage.
Exactly.
That part, period.
If you don't know what you're talking about, don't talk about it.
Right.
And I get, and I tried to understand where she was coming from, but it just felt like, okay, you're not actually a subject matter expert, but neither was I to write a story about a white character. So let's talk to our nonfiction writers about getting to that place and connecting with those readers, because if you look at the bookshelf, everybody is the guru now. Everybody is the guru. I'm going to tell you how to do this. I'm going to tell you how to do that. And it scares me. It really does, because there's a lot of bad information floating. So anybody from a nonfiction perspective, talk a little bit about that. Anybody we haven't heard from? Okay. Hi, Shonda, talk to us.
So my book, Black Indian, it's interesting because first and foremost, I had to be an expert on my family narratives and my family stories. So what I did was I interviewed everybody, all my family, so I could make sure that I was telling their stories correctly in connection with my memory of something that happened. So that's what, with regards to memoir, that's what you need to do, because memoir, you're writing from memory and then you're telling true stories. The other thing about it is, because I'm writing a book about race and ethnicity and history as well, and in the writing of this book, I became an expert on Black Indian scholarship and American Indian scholarship, and then migration narratives as well, because I was looking at how mixed race families interacted, first and foremost, how they became mixed race with that intersection of African Americans and American Indians with European in there, and then how they moved across the country because of whatever reason. It sounds like someone's mic is open.
Yes, everybody, we can close our mics. There you
Yeah,
go.
I hear someone's mic in the background. At any rate, so I had to make sure that I was getting my dates correct, that my information was correct when I talked about the Racial Integrity Act of 1924 and how that occurred. And when I talked about the Trail of Tears, 1830, when I talked about 1619, the first Angolans, not just Africans, but Angolans, and, how they were baptized when they got off the ship into Christianity. So there are like facts that I had to have, because historians would go behind me and they would say, is that correct? And then I also had, full-blood American Indians who would be reading this book to say, is she actually American Indian? So like you had to have those for me, I had to be really specific about the details in the book. And then the last thing that I did to make sure that I was authentic was I did my DNA. And, I took that test and I have my American Indian DNA. And when I looked at the DNA and I went back the 7 generations that they say you had your full blood American Indian ancestors, I knew exactly who those people were. And then, of course, I know with my African American ancestry, I know that I am Black, from my father, and then from visibly being Black. But because of enslavement, we don't have that ability to trace across the Middle Passage and to go from Angola, from Jamestown, or from the West Indies, or wherever we were dropped off. We don't always have that ability to go back to the continent, to the motherland. So that's my next book. I'm actually going to be researching that part of my heritage as well.
I love that you're talking about doing the research and doing the work, so that when you do tell your story, people will see you as an expert. They're not just seeing someone who say, I think I'm native, I'm going to write this book, fill it with a bunch of things I think I know, you're going back and you're getting the facts. And so that your story is something that's valid, is authentic, people can connect with it. And, you never know who knows more than you, who may step in and say,
Yep.
hey, I read your book. You're accurate in this area or that area. I'm an expert on this. Everybody is reading this work that
True.
out there. There's no
Very
limit to it.
And I'm so sorry. I wanted to add the other thing that I do is I practice African traditions and I also practice American Indian traditions. So when people say to me, how do I start to dance at a powwow? I can share that experience. So when people say to me, what does it mean to be a to do West African dance? And I can share songs with them and I can talk about that as well. So I'm a cultural worker as well as a writer and educator. So, and I want to definitely purport that authenticity in my work, in my walk, in what I do. So when people ask me, I can say, this is what I do know. And then in the tradition, we say, oh, this is what I don't know.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And we're going to unfortunately have to move on from this topic, but I want to say this is such a great conversation because of the importance of getting it right. Someone said, what makes a subject matter expert without a formal degree? I don't think you have to have a degree to be a subject matter expert, but you should either put it like this: your book has a message. And if you, for instance, I said before, you're writing about being married, but you've never been married, maybe the message is you're writing from the perspective of someone who wants to be married, and you're talking about your perceptions, what you've learned, what you know to be true. You've interviewed your grandmother who's been married 50 years. There are there's different angles to see a story, but the experts to me are those who have some experience in that particular area. You need to have, to me, a great deal of experience, but you got to have at least some. Some of us, I see this all the time. People will say, and let's talk about this for a second before we go on to talk about marketing and book publishing. But some people will say, I got a vision from God to write a book, and I got up and I wrote the book, and they just put it out. That scares me. I don't get me, I'm a big believer in God, but it scares me because I never hear them say, I really had a message, or I had a strategy, or I did an outline, or I got it edited, or I did all these necessary steps. Let's talk a little bit about that motivation to write without proper standard in writing. Meaning, and this is so important also because as self-published authors specifically, there's still this black eye that if you can't get a publishing deal, maybe you're not a good writer. I know that's not true. However, when you pick up a lot of self-published books and it's so poorly written, it's not edited, the book covers are no good, it leaves the idea that all of us are putting out bad works of art. So let's talk about writing with standards and rules and the importance of it and what happens, what you've learned in this process when you didn't write with a standard rule. I wrote 80,000 words. I had someone call me and say, I loved your book. I found a misspelled word. I was devastated, but I had to brush it off and say, oh, well, because it happens. I've read best-selling works that had misspelling words in grammatic errors. So let's talk a little bit about that. Anybody want to chime in? We haven't.
Yeah, definitely. Like, it doesn't matter how much you edit it. Like, for some reason, there's always a misspelled word. Like, I've gone through and edited and then re-edited, and I was like, it's misspelled still. It's good to have people that really care about what you're doing read the book. It gives them an insight, makes them feel like they're the first ones to read it, but in essence they're actually helping you, because I had a couple people do the same thing, and they had a pen. This is bad grammar, this is misspelled, so that kind of helps. And having it from different perspectives, you get different people's opinions on what is good grammar, or one person might have missed one misspelled word and the other person caught it. So it's always good to have people that care about what you're trying to do.
Right. And so that is important to have those beta readers, proofreaders, editors. You definitely want to do, because your message gets lost if you cannot even read what, if people can't read what you're writing, then your message is going to get lost.
Absolutely.
So that's why the editing piece is so important. And for those of you who are on the Black Writers Workspace, we have 13,000 writers. I work with a lot of writers. There are those who say, I'll just self-edit it. I'll just do it myself. And I'm going, I own a PR firm and I can't self-edit. I have editors to review my work.
Don't do it.
But I know it seems easy. I'll get Grammarly, and that'll take care of it for me. I have Grammarly. I love it. It's awesome. But I wouldn't depend
Grammarly
on
was a life changer for me.
Grammarly is pretty good, but Grammarly is for you when you self-edit prior to sending it to your editor. Because I use Grammarly and it'll help me, get figure, it helps. It helps, but that is not the end all be all. When it comes to editing, my first book, Eve's Confession, Songs of a Lustful Soul. I did the first, it was not one book, but it's supposed to be two. The first book, I like it, but you had all these issues, all these sentence structure issues. And the bad part was I kid you not, over $2,000 on editing because I was following all this advice. I was new to the game over 10 years ago, new to the game. I'm following every piece of advice given to me. You got to have 2 or 3 editors look at it before we get to the proofreader rather. And I did everything and I still have editing issues. There was no transitional statements. I didn't know. I had no idea. I just wanted to write my book, but there was no transition statements, nothing, and I thought these people knew what they were doing. So I would strongly suggest Grammarly is great. It helps you if you don't know what you're doing, for real, because editing is not my strong suit. But if you don't know what you're doing, Grammarly is good for that. But you need to hire a qualified editor who's well-versed in your genre. I forget the guy, his your love is our magic. You want to get beta readers, which is great. I prefer when I get beta readers, I don't want them to have any type of don't be concerned with my feelings and my emotions, because people, I don't want to hurt you, so I'm not going to say that this is a problem. No, I need you to read my story, chop it through it, and give it back to me. Because if you care about my feelings, you're not helping me. Help me. Don't care about my feelings. Care that I want to care enough to get a good story out. If you want me to have one of the best stories out, then tell me, girl, this makes no sense. I don't understand this. Instead of saying, it's good. Oh, no. No, girl. No, tell me, girl. No, you need to start over. Tell me the truth, because the truth will set me free and the truth will make me a better writer. So if you're picking beta readers, I would say get avid readers who are beta readers, those who can really get into your story and let you know what's good, what's working, what's not, and you go back to the drawing table. I prefer to do that before it's launched. That way you don't have a book out there, you got to pull it down. No, don't let your ego and your pride put it to the side, because there's no place for it when you are writing your story.
It's really important as a writer to be in community with other writers as you're writing. And I would not have gotten my book completed if I had not sat down with other writers, shared my work with them, and really outlined, this is the kind of feedback that I need, at this time. Like, you still get to have your feelings. Don't nobody got to hurt your feelings to give you, constructive feedback. But if they're going to do that, it probably makes sense that there's someone who also knows what the writing process is like, who understands different devices, who understands different parts of writing within the genre that you're working in. I wouldn't go to a fiction writers group with my book of poems, because that's an entirely different set of skills. And I think a lot of people forget writing is skilled work. Anyone can do it, but not everyone is skilled at it. There are rules, there are standards, different things have different rules. I'm not worried about, APA and all of that. I'm not worried about, the margins and all that, because I'm a poet. My stuff is going to look like what it looks like, and I'm not going to double space if the poem doesn't call for double spacing. And I will talk to the publishing body about that, and I have. I just got a poem accepted to a journal, and they were very strict, and I was like, hey, that actually doesn't work for what I'm doing, so let me know. But this is what you're getting, because that's what it is. And it takes a while to get to that point. And for me, being in community with other writers has been a huge part of that. I sign up for workshops. Sometimes I'll pay for workshops if it's a reputable provider who I really trust to give me a good experience. Sometimes I find free workshops that are, just writers get together to be together and do the work. But we share a vocabulary. We share common goals. My goal as a writer is to connect with people and to have people feel connected and seen in their human experience. So I need to be working with people who can help me move towards that goal. And so that's why I'm hanging out with other poets, because other poets know what that means to be looking to connect in that way through these kinds of words. Because Grammarly doesn't do much for me. Like, do I use it? Yes, because occasionally something doesn't match up and it'll catch it in a way that I won't. But there, no AI can replace another human eye, because you're not writing for AI, you're writing for people, and people need to be the ones who experience your work. So I'm a big proponent of writing in community with other writers.
I tell you, that's a great segue into our conversation about the types of ways that we are finalizing our manuscripts and moving to the publishing process. So I 100% agree. You do have to find people who can read and give you a very honest assessment of your work. And take the criticism. I mean, it's really going to make you a better writer. But this idea of writing for the sake of writing, I have a hard time with that. I have read some amazing books that followed no structure. I mean, amazing stories that followed no structure in writing. And I'm like, this could be something that could go to the big screen, but I'm struggling just to read it. No quotation marks, no punctuation. I mean, just dumped it on the paper and sent it to Amazon, got it published, and sold those 150 copies to family. And because family will make you feel good that first couple of weeks of after your book come out, they're gonna buy all those copies. You're like, oh, I sold 150.
Some family want free stuff.
Exactly.
And they don't read them.
No, they gotta read them. No,
they just bought them, but they don't read them. Sorry,
Let me.
I haven't read it yet. It's been 2 months.
Yeah.
For too much. Now you're not gonna know. And I have, and people will buy them, and you go to their house, they're sitting on the on the cabinet or whatever. You haven't even cracked that book open, have you? But you really want to make sure that you can create a fan base beyond your family and friends.
Right.
And to do that, you have to have good work. So let's talk about publishing. Now let's talk about book marketing, book publishing. Sorry, guys, we've got the time goes so fast. So forgive me if we kind of move in a little fast. But for those of you who have a traditional publisher, I want to start with you to talk to our viewers about your process and what did you do to get a traditional publishing deal and what happened with that deal. And if you are using other means of publishing, what's your take on, self-publishing versus traditional publishing? I vanity published one book. My first book, knew nothing. It was 2010. I knew nothing about publishing. I wrote the book, sent it off to a vanity publisher, spent about $1,200 with them, and they put the book out, beautiful cover. And now I have no access to the Facebook page. I have, they call me obsessively. I had to literally block them because it's so annoying. I spent too much money. I made all the mistakes. So I personally won't do that again. My second and third book, I completely self-published myself with the help, of course, of consultants who help with different pieces of it. But for those of you who have traditionally published, let's take some time, because this is a question I get all the time on the page. How do I get an agent? How do I get a traditional publishing deal? And I can tell you what I've heard. I've only queried maybe 1 or 2 agents. It just wasn't for me because I wanted to get my work out immediately. That's why I didn't go the traditional publishing deal. But let's start with you, Shonda. I think you mentioned that you have traditionally published books. Talk to us a little bit about this process. Let's demystify this process for those who are seeking to get an agent and to get a deal.
So I actually want to like back up to with regards to when people say I want to get an agent, that's an honorable endeavor. The one thing that you probably want to do is you want to be in the space of writers and agents so you can start to learn the business and you can learn what agents are looking for. So, for example, one of the largest writing conferences in probably the world, but Association of Writers and Writing Programs happens yearly. And every publishing industry person descends upon this conference. So the AWP. Agents are there, publishers are there, indie publishers, vanity publishers, Audible is, everyone is there around the world. People from Bloomsbury come from England. So my journey, when I first started writing my book, Black Indian, the memoir, I queried a couple of agents. One agent said, we're not doing dark memoir right now because it was a bit of a sad story. And I thought, okay, I'll just move to the next one. And then the community that I was hanging out with, basically writers, publishers, that kind of a thing. And I told one of the publishers who I knew, Chris Jackson, and I said, hey, Chris, I'm working on this book. He said, send me the pages. He was a publisher at, I think, Little and Brown at the time. And when I sent him the pages, he said, I think we might want to work with this. And then I thought, oh, maybe I should have an agent. And so I went to send my information to an agent. And then when I sent it to the agent, she said, sure, we'll take the book on. But because I had a publisher already, it was like no work on her behalf. So we worked together, that agent and I worked together, a New York agent, for 6 months. And the thing that I have learned about some publishers, depending on what they're working on, because they're busy. And so Chris Jackson at the time, when my agent kept querying him, and he never got back to her. So the book never went through Chris's publishing company. And then the agent and I parted ways because the book didn't get published. So I just kept holding on to my book. I said, this is a good book. It's not a story that's been out there. And fast forward to being at AWP, and I walked past a table, one of the vendors at AWP, which was from my state, Michigan. I was born in Kalamazoo, Michigan. I walked past Wayne State University Press, and I saw that they had a section for Michigan authors. And I literally walked past, backed up. The editor who became my editor was there, and I said, hey, I have this memoir about Michigan. She said, well, why don't you send it to me? I'd love to read it. By the time I left her table, I already had the book queued up in my email. This is another thing about being prepared when opportunities come to you. And I sent her the book as soon as I left her table. And so it ensued. She said, yes, I'd like to publish it. And that's how Black Indian got published. I actually had another agent. I forgot about the other part. When I parted ways with my first agent, Marie Brown also picked up this book. Marie Brown is a giant in the literary industry for African Americans. She published so many people. And Marie Brown believed in the book as well, but publishers didn't want to pick up the book because I did not have a quote unquote platform at the time. Mm-hmm. And so that's another piece about when you think that you have a good book and an agent thinks you have a good book and somebody else thinks you have a good book, but marketing thinks you don't have enough of a platform, that's another issue. So there are so many different issues to think about. Getting an agent is fantastic. Getting an agent who believes in the work is even better, if you can do that. But there are so many different steps to getting published. And then the other thing to think about is the agent the right agent for you? I have heard wonderful stories about agents who love their authors and they work really well together. And then I've heard really not so great stories about agents who will pick you up just because they don't have an African American on their roster. And then your book gets kind of waylaid to the side, or they're not responding to you, or they're not doing work on behalf of your book. So there are just this is a part of being a writer in with regards to this journey, if you're looking at being traditionally published. And then also another thing that some of my writer friends do is while they're waiting for the traditional publisher to publish, they will go ahead and publish chapbooks of poetry. So for example, they'll self-publish or they'll go to other presses, small presses to publish, or they'll submit their chapbook to a poetry contest. Sometimes they'll win the contest. When I preface this saying that you should be in the room of writers or be in a community of writers, my first book was published, Who's Afraid of Black Indians, because I was on the Virginia Poetry Society board. And one of my board members said, "Hey, why don't you send me a manuscript? I know you've got some work." And she had a small press. I said, "Okay, great." My second book of poetry, the same way. The president of the Virginia Poetry Society said, "Why don't you submit that manuscript to me that you've been reading from?" And it was San Francisco Bay Publishers. And it was a small press again, but I got published. And then the two anthologies that I published, I knew the publisher, and he said, "You know what? Well, you've been working in and around poetry all, for years. Why don't you compile, a poetry anthology?" So I have to say, sometimes it really helps to have good friends
Yeah.
in the industry.
Well, that's great. It's so funny. You said a couple of things that I've heard too. Back to this platform for those who are looking to find someone to publish them. We actually had a workshop 2 years ago, and we had a lady on who is an agent, and she said a couple of things that I think it's important to know. She said, first of all, they being publishing companies are looking for writers with a platform. She didn't say this, but I read that some agencies want you to have thousands, 50,000 followers on Twitter, things like that. That can be very tough to do if you're not already a celebrity, and it can be very expensive to get to that place. Those are the types of things. And she also said that if you self-publish your first book, it's very hard to get a publisher to traditionally publish another book because they feel like you've already exposed yourself, the work. And if you didn't sell 15, 20,000 copies of that self-published book, then once again, there's no platform for them. And it's almost like you're still doing the work, as a traditionally published author. Now, I don't know what the money looks like. We know there's been a lot of controversy over how much black writers are getting for their books compared to what white writers are getting for books that aren't as popular or as successful. We know that was a big deal that came out a couple of years ago. But one of the things I concern myself with, the people I know with publishing deals, is the fact that you have to write on deadline. I know that sounds odd, but the type of writer that I am, to say, okay, you put this book out, I've given you 50K, and now I need a book every year. If I don't have that in me, then how do you handle that? So I know, Renee, did you say that you had also traditionally published a book?
Yes, I have. So in the very
Talk to us
beginning,
about it. Mhm.
yeah, so in the very beginning, when I first started the process, to be honest, I didn't, like most writers, beginning writers, I didn't really know where to start. I was new to the whole process. So I wasn't sure whether I should self publish, go through a company. I didn't know what to do. All I knew was on the back end, I was writing, I was creating, and I had works off to the side, just waiting to do something with it. And because I didn't know, I actually started doing both simultaneously. So I started self-publishing my journals and children's math notebooks and going through the traditional company for the children's picture book. And I thought, well, this will be interesting because like we were just talking earlier, like we're writers have crazy minds. So sometimes we're working on multiple projects as things are jumping out at us. So I'm creating this, I'm writing that, and I'm writing that. And so as all that's happening, I'm also going through these two different channels to see how it's going to go. And I quickly noticed that, to be honest with you, I didn't have a bad experience going through the publishing company. It was a good experience, but there were pros and cons to both ends. And I quickly noticed that right off the bat, it was a whole lot more money. And so I thought, oh, okay. they're going to kill my pockets with this process. But I noticed I was spending, some hefty money on the other end, self-publishing as well. So just kind of going through the process, making payments and dividing up money each way. I thought, okay, so it's hefty money both ways. I'm spending more here, but what's happening with each process along the way? I also noticed that creatively, um, with the publishing company, it was a challenge to get them to see my view and really put forth what I wanted the way I wanted it. And it took a lot more of, hey, no, that's not what I wanted. That's not where that page is supposed to be. That's not how that's supposed to be broken down. So it was a lot of do-overs, if you will. With on the self-publishing end, it was a little bit more straight to the point. So those were some of the challenges that I was facing, and coming and working with the publishing company. I think they were also a little taken back by the fact that my children and I were also the illustrators, and we wanted illustration credit. But we wanted them to be able to assist us with bringing our artwork to life. And I believe the publishing company wants more credit. So it probably felt like to them we were taking some of that away, which we felt like we had the right to do. And we put a lot of work into it. So it felt at some times that it was a little bit of fight going on. But in the end result was really good on both ends. So I noticed that the going through the publishing company, that process was much longer. Where I wanted to pick up the speed, I had to kind of go with their pace, whether I like that or not. And then on the self-publishing end, it was my timing. And so I kept those wheels moving. It was my deadlines and my timelines. So that was an interesting comparison, and going through both of those at the same time, it gave me my aha. Okay, so these are the differences. Another thing at the tail end is royalty wise, pretty big chunk at the end. The publishing companies, they take a pretty big chunk, and so sometimes it feels like on the back end the end result is, what are you getting back? That's not the primary focus. That's not the reason why we write is just for money. We're writers, we're creators. So we're going to do this regardless because we're passionate about it. But it is a tough pill to swallow, after all the money that you're spending. The end result is they take a big, pretty chunk out, at the end. So that was something that I noticed along the way. But again, it didn't necessarily deter me, because I have to admit that when there were times where I did want to scale back and take somewhat of a break, it was a little bit refreshing to know that I had handed my project over, I did my piece, and now I've got some people working and doing what they need to do. And I can kind of focus on other projects while they are doing what they need to do to get my project finished. So you see what I'm saying? You've got those pros and cons going on. So I am not a naysayer to the, using publishing companies. But again, you got to know what you're getting into. You got to know what the end result's going to be. Take it or leave it. There's ups and downs with each end. But I have to say that I learned, there's a positive in everything. I learned so much going through both process, and I am grateful that I did both simultaneously. It might have been a little bit crazy to do that, but I learned a lot doing that simultaneously.
Excellent. Well, let's move to this vanity and self-publishing. And thank you, ladies, so much. Honestly, you really shine a lot of you answered my question about the process. I ask myself this all the time. Why not start, querying, trying to get an agent and going through the process? I am not opposed to it. What I do have a challenge with is the gatekeepers are still primarily not us. Okay. And so our work still has to go through this filter of being acceptable to what the gatekeepers perceive to be mainstream readers, which are not primarily Black readers. And so who's going, do they trust or believe in the Black experience, the Black story, is the challenge I have. Is that's one issue. One of the other issue I have is this whole idea of having this platform. I feel like we have to protect the Black literary world. We have to make sure that the books that are going to be out on the shelf in 50 years are not just books by people who have 50,000 followers on Twitter and TikTok. Okay, I don't want to read a bunch of books by a bunch of TikTokers and celebrities and athletes. I'm sorry, I don't. I love literature. And so I want to make sure that we're preserving it and we're thinking about these processes and that these agents and publishing houses are honoring the Black experience and how they select in their books. So that's my 2 cents on that. I know there are some others here who have also used, traditionally published, and we're going to get to you as well. But I want you guys to talk a little bit more about the vanity and the self-publishing. And TH, we haven't heard from you in a minute. Talk to us a little bit about your process and what you did to get your books out there. We just want to hear from everybody about what you did in order to get yourself published.
Well, mine was a mix of the two. Once I finished writing like my first book, second, third, I attempted to go the traditional route. So basically, my process is once I finish the multiple cycles of editing, proofreading, beta readers, etc., make sure that my book is as pristine as humanly possible. That's when I start, sending out my query letters to different, literary agents. I basically give myself between like 3 to 6 months where I say, I'm going to try to go the traditional route. And at that point, after that 6 months has expired and I haven't received a certain type of response from a literary agent who is interested in my book, then I essentially say, well, I'm just going to publish it myself. So during that time frame, there'll be periods where, you get no response whatsoever. You'll get hundreds of no. Like the typical answer is that I like your story, but I'm not in love with your story. Mm-hmm. So every once in a while, I would get someone that said, hey, I'm in love with your story. Send me your first 100 pages. Okay, send me your entire manuscript. But ultimately, I never secured that agent who thought that they could sell my work. So at that point, as I mentioned before, I just decided to publish my work myself. I decided to market it and advertise, and I'll reach out to reputable PR people, social media content creators, all those things that you would potentially still need. I would assume, because I never published, traditionally, that I would need to be published traditionally. And I essentially just, created my own publishing company, created an LLC, and I just published it myself, and I promoted myself. I put together my own book tour. So I'll literally, like, the good thing, and maybe it's me being a techie, Google is like a powerful tool that you can use to your advantage. I just basically Google, and you just, whatever you're looking for, just put it in there. All the independent bookstores between New York to, Florida. And I'll go take that list and I'll contact them. I'll send them my press kit. I'll do follow-ups. I'll give them a call. If they're a local bookstore, I'll show up and pop up and announce. And then at that point, you're just selling yourself. So it's one of those things where you're just like, okay, I want to do the traditional thing. If they love it, great. But if they don't, then that shouldn't be a deterrent for you. Because, 16 years into writing 3 books and one coming out at the end of this month, like it has paid off dividends. Am I a New York Times bestseller? No, I'm not. But my books have paid off my student loans. So it has its benefits. You can make money where you are profitable. You might have to do a little bit more, Wayne, like I say, you are going to have to do a little bit more legwork. But at the end of the day, if you do what you're supposed to do and you follow the formula of, how you run your business and you treat it as a business, you'll come out on top.
Excellent. I want everybody, if you can, put your information in the comment area so people can know how to buy your books. For those of you out there, I hope that you are hearing and listening and learning. There's so much information, so much knowledge and wisdom coming here. I want you to know that there are many ways to publish a book. You don't have to just go one route. It's interesting because I hear this question a lot. I want to get agent, I want to get traditionally published. There are those writers who think it's just you write the book and they will come. It's not that easy. As Shonda mentioned to us, be in the right setting, connect with the right people, go to the right events. Get connected in this writing industry, learn everything that you can learn. And as Renee mentioned, there are two ways to do it. It can be lucrative on both ends. However, it's work. It's work. You have to put the time into it. And as TH mentioned before, it's just that for me, I'm with you, TH. When I looked at the timeline for getting my book out from a traditional perspective, it just felt like I needed to get my work out faster. I wanted to go on and get it out. And so I decided to self-publish. So let's talk a little bit about self-publishing. And then I want to end this. The last 10 minutes is going to be all about book marketing. So you guys get ready to share your ideas about book marketing with everyone and some unique ideas. What you're doing in order to market your book. But on the self-publishing side, a couple of things to know. I've self-published basically 3 books. Writing with standard and rule is important. Once you have your manuscript done, then you have to decide whether or not, once it's edited, you have to decide about a couple of things. One, you need to start your marketing strategy early. Okay. Don't wait to put together a marketing strategy after the book is done. You need to start that immediately. And you need to know your genre. Anybody want to chime in about this genre selection piece? Because I think it's so important, because there's so many different genres out there. When you say my book is general fiction, you are now competing with a lot of books. So being able to drill down and understand specifically what your genre is, and the target audience. I do marketing and PR for a living. You got to know your target audience and how to reach them. That's important. Anna, talk to us about your target audience. I know you write in different genres. Is there something unique that you're doing to reach your audience for one specific genre?
So part of that is even not just the marketing side, but when you're writing the book, it's knowing lengthwise the expectations. If some of my books are high fantasy, I'm not going to be able to pass a 100-page book off as high fantasies. That's just not what the readers expect. So when you read the genre, you start to kind of formulate an idea of, they're going to be expecting a 300, 400, 500-page book if you're writing in high fantasy. For me, when I'm writing in my African American books, whether it be romance or suspense and all, it still comes back to reading the genre, seeing what the readers are expecting. The whole thing about the editing piece. Everybody knew back in the day, those Triple Crown books, you knew what you were going to get with a Triple Crown book, but their audience was okay with all the grammar stuff. And, it was really more of a conversational type of presentation of a story than following, the traditional English rules or what have you. And so they were still making money at that peak time with books that, for English teachers, were like, oh my God, this editing and all. But again, their audience, they knew what their audience wanted. And so that's what they catered to. And so, reading in the genre and knowing the genre helps you be able to, number one, write the story that's going to resonate with those particular readers. And then when you start your marketing, you'll know, are they looking for bright colors? There are kind of standards as far as cover designs. With urban books, there are specific elements that you're going to see more. You won't necessarily see those same elements in sweet romance or cozy mysteries. And so all of those pieces fit together to help you identify, who your market is, and be able to create a story that market is going to enjoy, and then start to find where they are. So find those groups that those book clubs that's what they say they read. Go out and you have to do the research. And if there are particular conventions, I do cons. So I will go out and, I did Jordan Con last year. This year, there are local book festivals. So the Conyers Book Festival is a new one. And we know the Conyers area in Georgia has a good, hefty African-American population that tends to come out for things. So that's an event that I'm going to go and actually vend and do. I can actually do both sets, the Anna Gia Wright books and the Aziza Sphinx books, and know that there'll be people who would enjoy one, the other, or potentially both. So, being able to know these things, know that your presentation is going to be something that your audience is looking for, and then being able to find that audience by going out, doing the work, researching, connecting with those people is kind of what gets you where you need to go.
Excellent. Absolutely. Knowing that genre is important for those out there, know who you're writing for, know how to connect with them, understand that every genre comes with a specific target audience. Your audience may be unique. I mean, I wrote a women's fiction book, and I didn't, in my opinion, do enough homework on the unique audience that book was for. Now I'm looking at it because it deals with a lot of mental health issues. And now I'm thinking about getting it into some of our women's clinics, our shelters. It deals with violence and rape and how to overcome these things, but it's a fictional book. If I had done the work the way I needed to up front, I would have been able to have a stronger marketing strategy. But that's one of the things that I had to learn over time, is that you have to start building that strategy for your marketing strategy early in the process for your book. So we're going to know our genre, select that genre, and now we're going to talk about, from self-publishing, how to distribute your book. There are many ways to do it: Amazon, Ingram Sparks. Anybody else want to talk about their distributing process really quickly so we can get into some of the marketing? I haven't heard from you, Tion. You want to talk about how you distribute your book?
Yes, the way I describe my books personally and for my authors, there's multiple ways. The first way is Amazon, of course, is one way that we use. But what I really love to do is have my authors have some books on hand and distribute them with a handwritten note to connect to the reader as well. Because what I do, that will create a long-lasting relationship for that same reader to come back more and more. So that's another way. So that's two ways. Another way we do it, you can do it by just having it broadcast on your social media page or also on your website as well. Yeah. So creating a page particularly just for your new book or upcoming book coming up. So that way it start to build the tension for it. So when it does get published, you already have that build up for it, which is part of marketing 101, right? So those are just some of the ways that I've been using technology in a way to get my book out. And then I heard someone talk about earlier about going to events and doing book signing and book launches, or even doing book tours, which is one of the things I'm planning on doing for the next 2 months that I'm here before I head out with military again for a year. Is I'm gonna do a book tour with all the authorities that I have been a part of while I was deployed last year, to build that up. So when I leave, I can still continue to build on that marketing piece while I'm in a different country, but have them to purchase it online somewhere.
Excellent, excellent. So we are talking now a little bit more about marketing. We're at our last 8 minutes. Gosh, y'all, we need another hour because I still feel like it's so much that we need to cover. But we've talked about writing with authenticity. We've talked about editing. We've talked about getting started. We've talked about traditional publishing, self-publishing. Now let's talk about the marketing piece and some of the things that we're doing to market our books. And Tion kind of teed that up very well. I will say this: Black Writers Workspace is something that's open to everyone. We have 13,000 writers on the private Facebook group. We do invite everybody to be a part. But as part of that brand, I also spun out a business called Direct to Author. And we do allow everyone to upload your books for free to direct2author.com. And we are promoting those books. So we have our own book marketplace. What we do with it is you can add your information, your book cover. You can add your social media. You can even add a video, a YouTube video of yourself talking about your book, promoting it. And then we link it back to however you prefer to sell your books. And the reason I did this site was because when you're trying to find a distributor, we can debate about, is Amazon the best source? I use KDP. And what I do, I upload my books myself. I have them designed, and then I buy them in bulk at the author's rate, and I sell them myself at my own rate. So when I buy my books, even my book on Amazon that is fully illustrated, I only spend $4 to get that book in hand, and then I can sell it for 15. So this is how I sell my books. Now, I have an Amazon page. I don't push a lot of people to it. Instead, I have my own website, and people come to my website to buy my books. I do the book events. When I speak at an event, I don't know if everybody's having this experience, but when I speak, I sell books. So when people are inviting you to come out and speak, do it. We held the first Black Writers Workspace book fair here in New Orleans in January. Very successful book fair. We're going to be doing that again next year. Do the book fairs. Go out and speak. Go to your libraries and tell them you want to do a signing. You have to go out, because the word self in self-publishing is real. It is on you to make it happen. So if you're unsure about your level of comfort with exposing things about yourself, you're not sure about your brand, I work with people on that. Get with somebody, get with Coach Ebony, get with somebody who can help you to build your brand, because that word self means you can't write a book and then go hide. You're not going to sell it. And whether you're traditionally published or not, you can't sell books by hiding. You've got to get out there. Now, are you comfortable going live on social media? Maybe not. Maybe you only want to post a couple of times, but you've got to find your comfort zone, and you have to become your brand. Your brand is you. Someone always say, a friend of mine, you always say, people don't buy the book, they buy you. They've got to trust you. So that's important to do. Anybody, let's kind of throw some ideas, some marketing ideas out there. What have you done that's unique, that has really, moved the needle for you selling your books? Go for it.
I actually made up some business cards with the cover of my book on the back, and I carry it with me. So the other day I was at the doctor's office giving blood, and I asked the nurse, I was like, "Do you read?" And I explained to her what my book was, and she was like, "Oh, I'm interested." I handed her a card. I was like, "My information's on there. Hit me up if you want to buy autograph. If you want to buy a book and I'll autograph it for you." So
Excellent.
yeah.
Excellent. Anybody else? That's great. Anybody else?
A couple of things that I have done. I'm sorry. I hope I didn't cut anyone off. I have, left a few free copies, and, frequented libraries or schools, and left a few copies, free of charge, to spark a conversation, to get people to reach out to me for additional information, or to inquire about, if we can come out and speak. I've also learned to be prepared. So I keep boxes in the back of my trunk, because if someone's stopping you to ask you and say, "Well, what about your book? Can you show me? Can I have a copy?" and you have nothing on you, then you're not prepared. If you stay ready, then you don't have to get ready. And another thing I've also learned along the way is everybody doesn't always have cash on them. And they say, "Well, if you could take my card." So now I have the ability to take your Visa or whatever it is on site. I take card too. Let me get that for you. So just being prepared with those things on site, ready to go when it's time for a purchase.
Excellent. Anybody else?
I had really good experience with using QR codes, because similarly, I would do readings. Readings are my most successful way of selling books. If people hear me read, I sell a book. Even if I don't have books on me, I try to keep, I would always have a couple in my purse, always have some in the car. But even in the case I don't have any, I have a QR code ready for, this is how you get to my website. This is how you get to my publisher's website. I have a link tree. I have a QR code for, here's my PayPal. You can just send me the money. There's just being ready to take people's money on the spot is a huge deal. But yeah, speaking events is a major thing. And, asking people like, are you looking for readers? Are you looking for readers? Going to open mics, and because again, poetry. And one of the most successful experiences I had was I got into a book fair. It was a book festival, and I sold every single book that I had. If people picked it up and looked inside of it, I made the sale. So I highly recommend getting out there and either having people hear you read the work or getting it into their hands. That was major for me.
Excellent. Anybody else?
Yep. I was going to say really quickly, everything, especially Michelle, everything you said, I'm like, oh my God, she's a fly on the wall when I talk to my clients. Okay. Well, let me tell you, one of the things that I love to do is put my name out there as a speaker for a specific thing. So if you are writing more like fiction, nonfiction, if you are an expert on something, get on somebody's panel. I'm all about love and relationships. So I'm doing these things often. And I talk about my book. I always slide it in there. Shamelessly plug your book every single time you can. There's nothing wrong with it. Make people get sick of hearing about it to the point they read it and they reviewed it. Okay. Do not be ashamed to talk about your book. Do not. Okay. So shameless plug every chance you get. Hit people's podcasts if they're talking about, for me again, love and relationships. That's what you talk about. Hey, how can I be on there? We need to talk about that. And I slide my book right on in there. This is my website. This is how you purchase, and go from there. Always do it every single time you get an opportunity, or you create the opportunity to talk about your book.
Tina? Anybody else? Oh, Tina?
I'm a podcast host. I'm a podcaster. So all your authors out there, speakers, coaches, reach out to me. Let's talk.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, everybody, this has been fantastic. So much knowledge, so much information. We just talked about marketing. We have business cards. Stay prepared. Keep your books on you. Use QR codes. Do book readings. Absolutely. Stand in the mirror, practice if you need to, but do those things. Have a POS, have a point of sale system with you. PayPal, Square. Never show up and it's like, oh, I only take cash. Trust me, guys, those things are easy to use. Do the speaking events, have no shame, podcast. Something else I want to say, utilize social media well. One of the best things I ever did was to start the Black Writers Workspace. It was supposed to be for me and 15 people, and now it's 13,000. That group opened so many doors for me. I have no idea. I can't even tell you all the different things I've been able to do because of the Black Writers Workspace, which really was just supposed to be a few friends talking about books. So it came at a good time. This writing world opened so many doors. I've made more money off of the things I do that's not about selling books. I'm going to be honest with you. I've been more successful in creating the business direct to author and speaking at events. People pay me to come out and speak now, all because of a Facebook group. And I am like, wow. I've been interviewed multiple times. Take these opportunities, use them to promote your work. But writing opens so many doors for you. And so just continue to do that. Thank you, everybody, for being a part of this event. I want to say this. We've got a couple of things going on with the Black Writers Workspace. We are having a workshop in May. We are looking for speakers. So you can go on the page, you can find it. It will be May 18th through 20th. It's virtual. So please sign up to be a speaker. And then we're going to be promoting the event starting on Monday. You're welcome to be a part of it. It is a paid event. We'll have all the fees out there. It's a 3-day event. So we will put that out as well. We will be doing also, we are working to get all of our submissions in for the Chapter 1 writing competition. If you guys haven't submitted, we have cash and in-kind prizes. The deadline is May 1st for that as well. And then we're going to be doing our next Pen Posse, which will be next month. Not sure what the topic is. It all depends on what I wake up and feel like doing. And this particular session here, though, will be on YouTube and it will be on Facebook. So you can share it nonstop. For everyone out there, continue to share this so people can learn from these amazing writers. And thank you, everyone. You have been so great to be on here for 2 hours. As you see, it goes fast. It's not like you think. So everybody out there, please go buy the books for everyone on this screen, everyone. And since we already over, we're going to take 30 seconds and let everybody just give a farewell and a little bit of a nugget of inspiration to everyone. So let's start with you, Anna Gia, just very quickly. farewell and you want to give people how to get your book if they can't get it off of the comments, and then just a few words of encouragement. 30 seconds. Let's go.
All right. So thanks again for having me. You can buy all my books on www.energiawright.com, and it's my name without the apostrophe. As far as my nugget, I always like to clarify for people what I feel the words writer and author mean. For me, I will always be a writer. I will always write. I may not always be an author. Being an author is a business. So when you go into this, if you want to be a writer and be okay with just being a writer. But if you want to be an author, then you know you have to go through all of this extra stuff. You have to treat it as a business. You have to get editing stuff done. It's not just the writing part, but it is being and presenting yourself as a business, as an author.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Manny?
Hey, thank you for having me. You can find my book on MannyMorales.com or Amazon. My tidbit is never lose your imagination. That's what creates your book, your mind. So if you lose that, you lose your focus on what you're trying to do.
Excellent. Excellent. Shonda?
So you can find my work at www.shonda, Shonda Buchanan, BUCHANAN.com. And yeah, I am available for readings, and I do a lot of lectures at museums and colleges, bookstores. So I'm available for that as well. With regards to my advice, I would say just know that you have a valid story to tell. Even if no one is saying to you, uh, that's a great story, just hold that story, hold your own story sacred, and continue to write that story no matter what.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being with us. Coach Tien?
Yes, again, thank you everyone for being on and watching us and sharing this video. Listen, you have, I just want to say, you have a story to tell. The greatest story ever told is your story. The best person that can share that story, guess who? You. So do it. Do it right now. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter at Tion Singletary, LinkedIn, Coach Tion Singletary. Type my name in Google. You will see all the great things that God has allowed me to do in this world. Take care, everybody.
Thank you so much, Tien. TH?
Thanks everybody who attended. For autograph books, you can go to my website, thmorenovels.com, just like my pen name. Those are where you can find the autograph books coming directly from me. I'm also on Amazon, so for people who don't have the time to read, I have audiobooks available, so I'll just read the book to you. Or if you prefer Kindle, you can go to Amazon for that as well. My tidbit is that you can't cheat the process. So make sure you outline, you professionally edit, and you mark it. And thanks again for joining us.
Thank you so much. So much. Thank Ebony?
Hey, you guys, I'm so thankful for this opportunity again. Thank you, Michelle, for this platform to welcome us all on. My nugget would be your SWV matters. That means that your story matters, your words matter, and your voice matter. As long as you realize that, as long as you accept it, you can go far. Your story, writing, and publishing your book is just the first part of it. You got to tell the world. You got to let everybody know what you're doing, because if no one knows, then what's the problem? Why you do it? You can find me on my website, or more information about me on my website, which is my name, ebonynicolesmith.com. And on social media, I am under Coach Ebony Nicole. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ebony. Atina?
Thank you all so much for sharing today. This has been wonderful. My tidbit, I suppose, is whatever kind of writing you're doing, find out what your why is. Why are you writing? What is your purpose? Identify your purpose and your mission and stay true to that. And that is how you will always be authentic in whatever you're doing, whether it's the creating, whether it's the marketing, whether it's the resting in between all these marathons of hard work. Figure out what your why is. And you can find me at Atina Danner Creative, ATENA, AtinaDannerCreative.com. And I mostly update on Instagram for my writing things. And you can find me on Instagram at Atina Delight. Again, that's ATENA. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Ms. Renee? We can't hear you.
Oh, no.
I'm sorry. Thank you guys for having me. This was like so not enough time, right? It was just so exciting. My nuggets are two things. When children talk, listen. Kids can do business too. You're never too young. My second nugget is if you want to get started, get started. Let go of the fear. Don't get in your own way. Don't overthink it. You want to do it, jump in anywhere and just do it. There are no wrong answers. You can find us on thestubshouse.com, also on Amazon. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at thestubhouse.com. We specialize in children's picture books, but we also have journal notebooks as well. But remember, you want to do it, just jump in and do it. Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you all. We're going to get you off, bring you off the screen, but I don't want anyone to go anywhere. So thank you again. We're going to end this session. To all of you who joined us, thank you. There have been people who've been with us the entire 2 hours. So we really appreciate you being a part of the Pen Posse. Look for us next month. We're going to be doing another topic. And for now, we would like to say farewell, everyone. Have a great weekend.